I've had a brain blast of sorts where when I'm thinking of black women, any black women, no matter what skin tone, and I'm thinking about relationships, I'm usually going off of what I'm seeing in my everyday life, what I've just seen throughout life. And it definitely gives me some blind spots because when I actually sat down and thought about it, and guys, I don't recommend you doing this because I swear I lost a few brain cells, but I went through all of my friends and even acquaintances that I've met, their partners, like ones that are in like serious relationships, so either engaged or married with children, whatever. Um, I went through it and I started to think, okay, out of those people, who has the darker skin? Again, I don't suggest you do this. I lost some brain cells. Don't think of the people in your life like this. It's pretty ignorant, but I did it for the sake of our last video where we were talking about it and how it seems to be so hard for black women to marry and find husbands. And so the majority of the people that I'm around, they mix and match. When I think about it, there are only a couple couples that I know when we want to talk about the black community out of the other white couples that I know who I would say are both about the same skin tone. If we would get specific, they're both pretty dark, and both come from pretty good families. He has a very great career in the military, and she has a pretty good job as well, though she came from a black family who also has quite a bit of wealth. Her parents both worked very hard, they're very successful in business, and so she enjoys a lot of the things that most of us Americans, even white Americans, like they don't get to go do things like skiing in Aspen but she does. So when I really sat down and thought about it, most of the black women I know are dating men of different races, or they're dating men who are lighter than them. So I kind of like divvied it up. There are some dating men who are, let's say, Cuban, but very, very pale skin. So the woman is the darker. Others that are dating men who are just like, let's say, mixed race, light skin. Some are dating men who are Asian, and then some are just dating men who are just straight up white. And so I only really know a couple couples who are actually, if we want to get to skin tone, the same skin tone. But usually when I think of black, I just think of black as being black, white as being white. If you're Hispanic or Latin or Asian, then that's what you are. So I thought that was very interesting. So of course, when I think, what do they mean by dark-skinned women can't get married, they can't have happy relationships? It's like most of the people that I'm referring to are dating outside of their race, while only a very few number of them are, in a relationship where, I don't know. I hate getting into the specifics. Like I said, I feel like I get stupid, more dumb every time I try to like break it down to skin tone. You should just think of someone's ethnicity and also think of nationality, because I do know a couple couples who are, dating outside of their nationalities, and so of course there's cultural barriers. But anyways, let's get on to this. Kelechi Okafor, I'm not hiding my white boyfriend. This opens up a really great conversation for, are black women afraid of dating outside of their race? And why is that? Is it because you're just not sexually attracted to the other men in the world? Because especially if you're in the US, black people, we only, and this is black men and black women, we only make up 13%. So how about everybody else? Like, you have so many other people to choose from. And I'm just gonna start reading it. A while ago I thought, why does it seem that most prominent black female activists seem to be dating white men? Then I had a moment of introspection where I thought, hang on, I'm one of those women. I speak up about racism and sexism affecting black women. I have an online following, and I have a white fiance who rarely features in my social media spaces. To explain where I stand, I need to tell you about my childhood. I was born in Nigeria, but moved to South London when I was 5. I grew up in Peckham in a predominantly black neighborhood. They call it Little Lagos. It was almost as if I hadn't left West Africa. I saw so many people who looked like me in Peckham. They were calling out to each other in the street. There were people there my mom had grown up with in Lagos. The streets looked different. The buildings looked different, but all very familiar. So I guess this is a photo of Peckham. I had left my father in Lagos to move in with my mother, but by the time I got here, she had a new partner and was pregnant. I was moving into a family unit that I wasn't a part of. Often I felt like an outsider in my own home. I thought about my identity from a very young age. When I got to this country, one of the first things I remember is speaking Yoruba in the car with my mom. My stepdad, who was also Nigerian, turned to me and said, "Start speaking English. You're in England now, you're not a bush girl." I knew it wasn't malicious, but I understood then that he had a desire to assimilate to British culture. I started thinking, I better start speaking like an English girl. But around young people my own age, there was a different set of challenges. Twerking through trauma, so that's a link for another article. I went to school with a mixture of students, Jamaican, Ghanaian, white, British, and I excelled academically and at sport. And there, some white children would laugh at my pronunciation. These things started making me realize that I didn't sound like everybody else, but there were also times when I felt very welcome. There was an Irish woman, an informal babysitter, who would pick me up from school. I'd eat Nutella on toast with her children at her home while I waited for my mom to come in and collect me. I felt comfortable with them. When we got to the age of dating, my attention to people wasn't based on ethnicity, but it was for some of my friends. If I said that I found a white guy cute, some of my black friends would go, "Ugh, no way, yuck." I would think, why is that their reaction? We're all in this school together. We're all in it together. You have to be funny and sexual, but not too sexual. Alright, so I don't know why they have that in bold print, but I just think it's interesting. You have to think to yourself, am I not attracted to these other races because I just don't find them sexually attractive, or am I not attractive because I don't feel like they would also be attracted to me, or because I don't know what my friends and family would think? If you're thinking like that, then obviously you're just kind of cutting yourself off from the rest of the world and your other love options, which in this day and age, I think everyone has the option to find someone who is going to make you happy. You can make them happy, and you can actually have a really wonderful life. We don't really have to do arranged marriages anymore. We don't have to marry just to keep our families together. We can actually marry based off of our passions and our heart. And so if you are kind of restricting yourself from all of these different people, I think you really have to ask yourself why. So moving on, my first white boyfriend was when I was a teenager. We didn't talk about race. I think that was mainly because we talked on MSN Messenger. I lived online. A lot of my growing up, development, and expression happened online. It was a different kind of connection, in some ways a more honest form of communication. But going out with a white guy was a whole new cultural experience, so different to my Nigerian upbringing. Culturally, my home was Nigerian. It wasn't British. While I dated both black and white boys, I couldn't ignore the fact that I felt more comfortable with black boys. Dating them felt more familiar. It was like home. We had a shorthand. I didn't have to explain what okra or plantain was, or why they needed out of respect to call my mom auntie. With the white Englishmen I dated, I often felt sexually fetishized and often patronized. With one serious boyfriend, it bothered me that he called my mom Christine, even when I specifically told him to call her auntie. He wasn't respectful enough to adapt to that part of my culture. The same guy often put me down. One day he and I were at a pond and said, "Oh wow, look at that duck." And he turned to me and replied, "That's a Canadian goose. I can't believe you haven't been taught that." It was the way he said it. There was an undercurrent to his words, a superiority. That was a big moment for me. I made the decision to stop dating white English guys. I met my fiance online on a dating site. On my profile, I had put an instruction to not contact me unless they had closely read my bio and understood my passions and hobbies. He sent me a message saying, "Would you like to go for coffee sometime?" I replied saying, I specifically said, "Read my profile and reply only if you share my interests." He replied, "But I did read your profile. I liked it. I want to meet you for a coffee." He told me that as he's Polish, he speaks directly. He wasn't going to woo me with a War and Peace length love letter. From our first date, we got on. I thought, oh, he's handsome. But it was more than that. We could talk so easily with each other. His color didn't factor into my attraction. But there is a huge difference between going out with a white Polish man and a white English man. When people think about interracial relationships, very rarely do they think of the nuance. Poland didn't have independence for more than 100 years before 1918. Historically, it's a country with people that know what it's like to be governed by outsiders. In my experience, many of the white English guys, and I say English because I haven't had experience around Welsh, Scottish, or Irishmen, didn't know their true history. They don't know about much about the transatlantic slave trade or colonization. These parts of history aren't delved into in secondary schools. If they were, many people might have better understanding of the minority experience. But what I found with my fiance and many Polish people I've met through him is a deep understanding of being a minority and facing prejudice in his country. That way we can relate to each other. My partner grew up under communism in a working class family, and that place of scarcity is something I can relate to as well. So let's continue going down. Love is not colorblind. I worry for people in interracial relationships who say I don't see color, because at some point you will have to face it. Your kids will have to face it. It's exhausting having to explain your life and culture to someone who hasn't lived it. There's no shorthand. You often have to explain certain cultural ways before you can enjoy it. Interracial relationships aren't groundbreaking, but interracial couples are popular on YouTube. They call them swirl couples, and they amass big followings by documenting their day-to-day lives. But it's lazy to say that these visible relationships are single-handedly changing the tapestry of our society. I often think they're a marketing ploy. I didn't want to do that with mine. There's another reason I rarely show my partner on social media. I get lots of trolls online. As a Black woman who has chose to speak up about issues affecting Black British women, I know I signed up for that, but I didn't sign up for my family and friends to be under attack, and I definitely didn't sign up for my relationships to be under scrutiny. But I need to be clear that I'm not hiding him or our relationship. And while in some ways I understand that it's natural for people to be interested in other people's relationships, the accusations of hiding my white partner, which blew up when I appeared on the panel of an American YouTube show, are a case of misogynoir? I'm not sure about that word, guys. Misogynoir is misogyny, aimed specifically at Black women where race and gender both play roles in bias. It's come more into our lexicon, especially online. Recently, when a study found that politician Diane Abbott alone received almost half of all the abusive tweets sent to female MPs in the run-up of our last general election, the language used was a marriage of sexism and racism, and it was even perpetuated. And it was even perpetuated. And it was even perpetuated by many people of color who saw her as an easy target. Serena Williams is also the recipient of this kind of abuse. A lot of attacks on Black women are overlooked because it's seen that our lives are less important. So I like how she just was honest about that. She basically just dates based off of just attraction and if you get along. I think it's funny that she took one bad experience and basically like that turned her off from everyone. You know, that would mean be like going to the store, which everyone has to go to the store. Everyone has to date if you want a relationship. But that'd be me going to the store and having a rude cashier and then being like, ugh, I'm never gonna go to a store ever again. I'm only ever gonna do self-checkout because that cashier at that store was rude. That's kind of like what she did with that one English guy. You know, obviously he just sounded like a douche, but let's be honest. There are people who are gonna treat you badly and act like they're better than you, even within your own race. I understand why she would not share the man that she's in love with, because with trolls online, they would try to attack her for that. But in the real world, it's just more of, what are you doing as a person? Like, are you able to build like your family up? Are you able to not only make enough wealth for your family to live off of, but also think about your children's children in the future? Are you happy at your job? Do you feel like you're on your life path? Like, there's just so much more to worry about and to focus on rather than what is the skin color of the person you're in love with or that you've partnered up. I think it will be very difficult for people to find happiness if they are only picking from one type of person. I feel like that's like the worst thing you could ever do for yourself, because you might find true happiness in the most unlikely of places. And so if that is a part of your mentality or your viewpoint, I definitely think you should ask yourself, okay, what is the real reason behind this? Is it because I'm just not sexually attracted to that type of person? Or is it because I have this idea around them, this limiting belief around them, and I don't think it will work out before I've even tried it?